Hi guys. Today we're doing a menopause talk. So, weight gain during menopause, what to do about it, why does it happen, basically all of that stuff. We'll keep it short and sweet, not to make it go too long, but I'll just see if I can invite Carissa. We're going to chat about dietary changes, exercise, training, that sort of stuff, and ways that you can support yourself through that. Oops. Got a baby eating dinner on the side too, so he might chuck some food on the floor. You good? Yeah. Okay. Hello.
How are you?
Good.
How's the feeding baby?
He's chewing on some sweet potato, but he keeps dropping it on the floor, even though he really likes it. Oh, I can't. I have to take it off. See? He's set up. Hopefully that keeps him distracted for long enough. Oh, shit. Okay, so I've introduced what we were talking about and stuff very briefly, because I know you want to keep it short. But do you want to cover like the first kind of overarching bit of like when does the weight gain start to occur?
Yeah.
So
I find weight gain can start anywhere for the menopause years. It can actually start way before. So I feel like women kind of generally actually don't experience any sort of weight gain until after menopause. So that's 4 years where they're actually starting to drop out. And I do think that can be quite common, but I feel like a bigger majority of women actually start to experience some sort of gradual weight gain in their perimenopause years. So that's sort of 10 years or so before menopause starts. So kind of from maybe late 30s, early 40s onwards. So yeah, I definitely see it start that 10 years before. And it can definitely be like quite a few kilos to something a bit more significant. So I think quite a few kilos can be pretty normal, and we can definitely work with that. But for some women, it's quite an amount. It can be like 10 plus kilos or something like that with the hormonal changes. So obviously that can be quite concerning for women because it's quite stressful when you put on weight very quickly, and there's no sort of reason for it, like dietary or exercise. So yeah, so it's definitely common. It's definitely a part of these hormonal transitions, and that's 40s to 55 is definitely there's weight gain for sure. So
I haven't really had too many menopause clients that have gone over that kind of 10 kilo threshold, but a lot of them do typically gain a couple of kilos, like on average, I'd guess that 5 that you said. So I definitely see it a lot. But yeah, like you said, it starts well before you actually hit menopause, especially if you've got those estrogen changes. Again, it depends on your specific case as to how severe it's going to be for you, and a lot of that is sort of genetic, and the rest of it, I guess, comes down to your metabolism. Can you not throw that on the ground, please? What was I going to say? Oh yeah, but why it's kind of occurring is obviously when you go through perimenopause and menopause, you have that estrogen drop, and there's a lot of links between estrogen and various functions on the body, but one of the things that it does do is influence our glucose metabolism through our insulin, and also through our liver in terms of making glucose from storage or turning certain things like fat and protein into glucose to be used around the body. So as that estrogen starts to drop, you get a lot more, I guess, dysregulation or even as far as like insulin resistance, let's say, depending on your genetics and your metabolism and how you already process glucose. So if you've already got pretty crappy, I just keep looking up sweet potato chips because he just keeps dropping them. But yeah, depending on how you already established your glucose metabolism and your genetics and such, that may be more of a factor or a less important background kind of symptom during menopause. Don't drop it. Yeah, I think that covers that part.
Yeah, I think that's pretty bang on. I think just there's so many hormones, but I do think distance, even just like a slight like insulin sensitivity, like can cause a couple of kilos. And I think as we become older, our hormones aren't as robust and resilient as they used to be, and everything. So I think it's really important for women to just remember that even though this is a normal hormonal transition, there are definitely changes beyond just the estrogen and progesterone does impact higher hormone cascade with those.
Stop touching things. Sorry.
So
yeah, can be normal. I think if we're going off of like what's normal and what you should be, I guess, worried about or what you should seek support with, I guess it depends on you. Like if you gain a couple of kilos and you're fine with it, cool. But if you're not fine with it, maybe we can adjust that with some dietary changes and like depending on your case, some other stuff that's going on.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I think that's really important too. I think there's a couple of kilos it's definitely expected. I do know because I work so closely with women in this space, as I know you do. It is stressful for women. Like even though 5 kilos doesn't seem a lot to maybe if it hasn't gone through menopause or even to a male, that you know 5 kilos doesn't sound like a lot. It can be quite a bit, or even 5 to 8 kilos. It can be quite a significant change for a female who maybe has never struggled with her weight, who has never really had to deal with any sort of weight related change. So definitely that if it is something that is stressing someone out or stressing one of our clients out, like there's definitely stuff we can do for sure. So like obviously the diet space is really cool to work with in this sort of place. It is it's not as easy, it doesn't happen overnight, but just really simple things that if people haven't thought about them, like removing some of the big inflammatory triggers, really amazing. I do find that there's a lot of women that I work with in their transitional, you know, hormone perimenopause and menopause years that are drinking quite a bit. It may not be excessively, but it probably could be a couple of standard drinks a night, so a couple of wines or a bottle of wine, or, you know, on the weekends and things like that. And that can be really detrimental in these hormonal change times. And so I definitely, you know, chat ladies around how much they're drinking and how much it could reduce, or if not even just remove that for a couple of years while they're going through the hormonal change, because it can have a significant impact on weight metabolism, the insulin and glucose regulation and things like that. Sugar is another one people really don't think a lot about. Like usually people working in our space for a while, they're very aware of the impacts that sugar has, but sometimes for women who haven't experienced any sort of weight concerns in their life and haven't had to dive too deeply into their diet, and then they experience the weight changes that happen with menopause. Sometimes when I go through their diet, there is quite a bit of sugar in there, so that can just be a simple bit of low-hanging fruit, like alcohol and sugar. If there's something quite regularly and you're worried about the weight gain that's happening in menopause, they're two things that you can remove very easily and get some pretty profound changes. Beyond that, though, if there's aren't in someone's diet, then I think that's when we need to go into the exercise, the calories and the macros. Like, are you eating nutrient-dense whole foods? Are you eating an anti-inflammatory diet? Are you protein? Are you overeating or undereating? Because both are equally important in this space. Like, if you're undereating and stressed out, you're going to get a response, a negative response. But if you're also over-consuming calories, that it's not offset by your exercise and, you know, day-to-day activity, then that's also going to give us an impact as well. So on the low-hanging fruit, like your alcohol and sugar and things like that, we can go right into like macros, calorie and protein space, and even the movement space. Really cool things. And while the changes will be gradual, it's not going to happen overnight. Usually over a couple of months, like we can get a couple of kilos off someone who's put them on, you know, once they. So it is a space that's beautiful and quite easy to work in. It takes time, as all hormonal things do for females, especially when it comes to weight. So
100%. I suppose I want to emphasize what you said briefly on terms of that stress management, because I know that will play in a lot, and it does. I do see it quite frequently that stop touching the paper. Menopausal, perimenopausal, anyone in that age bracket or that phase of life, typically they are more prone to stress, or like they're less. I would say they're less resilient as an overall factor. But that does play into weight gain and make them more stressed out about it. And like in terms of that liver and glucose support, we do want to keep an eye on stress as one of those factors that can boost. Oh wait, no, not really boost. What am I trying to say? Worsen insulin resistance. That's what I wanted to say. Yeah, just to touch on that really quickly again, because it's a very important factor that I look at with all of my menopausal clients. Even if you're saying that you're like a 1 out of 10 stress level, it's just that sensitivity to stress, same as your sensitivity to insulin, that changes during those perimenopausal years.
It can also just be as simple as under. Like I think naturally women
Yeah.
gravitate when they, especially in their hormonal years, when they put on weight for no reason and they really haven't changed their diet or their lifestyle. So it's really just a change in hormones and thus a change in their glycemic responses and thyroid responses and things like that. I think the natural go-to start under eating, so they'll dial their training up and cut their nutrition, which is actually the complete opposite tool of what we actually need. So quite often, like I do get women that I find are probably, over consuming and just in like things like sugars, things like that. More commonly, I find are under eating. So they're probably more than what their body needs and eating less than what their body needs, and fundamentally cutting some important things like carbohydrate,
Yeah.
which obviously
Yeah.
the nervous system are so important.
We do. I mean, we're talking about like insulin resistance and sugars and stuff. But you still need a certain amount of carbs to make your other hormones as well. So there is definitely some merit to eating carbs if we want to be specific. There's certain volumes that you can eat that you need as women to make certain hormones, but it does change with that perimenopausal phase in terms of the sensitivity. So it's one of those areas that can be a bit tricky to work out on your own. Like you said, a lot of people will just restrict in general rather than maybe rearranging the macros of their meal, or pretty much what you said too. But like you said about exercise as well, obviously that can be a stressor on the body. Obviously it can be a good stressor too, depending on how much you're doing. But if you do fall into that trap of like reducing your food too much and then adding too much exercise, it can be an actual stressor, which we'd want to moderate in order to like balance your nervous system and your response to that glucose, in order to manage your weight gain or weight in general, because not everyone gains weight in menopause too.
So, like for everyone listening, like I think like recapping, like the weight gain is normal and expected, a couple of kilos. If it's not concerning you, like exactly like what Mickey just said, like if it's not something that's concerning for you, and then don't worry about it, because it's not a bad gain a couple of kilos over your hormone years. Went quiet. Is he cool? Like, what did you just?
Yeah, he's just showing a piece of chicken, so I'm just making sure he can actually chew it.
What did
He's
you
still going. It's been in there for like a minute, and he's still going.
So there's
it's okay.
What is expected and normal versus what we can actually work with, but also based on how concerning that is for you. But also too, just understanding that there's a lot you can do with diet, wholesome nutrition, understanding your macros. And I think you said it really well before, like it's not about restricting, it's about rearranging. So getting into that is really important. And this is where I think too, like if you're listening to this and it's something you're like, well, I'm doing all of this, getting any sort of results, then that's the time to reach out to someone who works in the space, like either of us. But likewise too, if you're just actually really confused by all of it and what macros are, and it's just another stress on top of the fact that your hormones are changing behind the scenes, you've got hot flushes happening and you're gaining weight, like it can be really confusing and confronting for females when their hormones change and things are going on and they feel like they're not in control of their body. And I think that's definitely a time to reach out to someone who understands and works in the space. But for us, it's like I work in the perimenopause, early menopause and menopause space all the time. I don't find the space particularly confusing. I actually really enjoy working in the space. I know you do as well. For us, it's just like knowledge is power, and when you can actually give someone the information they need to work with it. I think also there is a space where you can advise and work with someone with HRT and things like that as well. So there's so much in the space. You just need, if you are confused and overwhelmed, the right people corner and in your team to help guide you through the right process for you.
Yeah, like Yeah, 100%. That education really helps you understand and kind of like just kind of take it with a grain of salt, all those changes that you experience. But there's certainly stuff that we can utilize and support you with that may make those changes a little bit smoother. So exercise, one of those, working with your diet and stuff. There's a lot of herbs that we can use to help. I mean, it doesn't do the job entirely because that would be silly, but there's a lot of herbs that we can use to help you work with those changes of insulin sensitivity and help regulate that weight gain so you're at a more comfortable space for you. Right. Checking on water. But even foods, like there's some that we use as herbs that are also foods, like bitter melon, which is definitely more popular in that Asian culture. It's bitter, so it doesn't really taste that great, hence why it's much more preferable to use as a herb. But even things like ginger that you can include nutritionally to help support that blood sugar regulation. And exercise, depending on what you like, everyone's different there, but weight training does have a lot of merit, especially in that menopause state where you do have more insulin sensitivity and there's changes to your hormones which affect your muscle retention or muscle building even.
Yep.
So we do kind of promote that strength training in that phase of life too, although really in all phases of life. But yeah, like you said, if you're not comfortable, you don't know what's going on, or you just want to like feel on top of it, that's where you can reach out to someone like one of the girls at JCN and get a little bit of support there or a plan in place even just to help you feel more comfortable with the transition.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's just the most important thing. Like if you're handling it fine, everything's going well, you've got a great GP and everything's great, that's perfect. But if you're not struggling, that you need to move to hormone transition, just give us a shout because we really work with this. So
it's day to day for us. Even though personally I have no experience with menopause, I did have postpartum hot flushes and I can't say they were pleasant. So I can relate on that level slightly. Yeah. But yeah, we certainly have our run of menopause clients, hey?
Yeah, sure. Did you have anything else to add, love, or that was...
No, I didn't really want to mention any more specific herbs because it really just depends on your case and like what else is going on.
Yeah.
But a lot of them will relate to the nervous system as well, so that ties in nicely. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to DM either me or Carissa or even the JCN page and they can forward you to the relevant person. But yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. Thanks, Carissa. Was that short enough? Short and sweet for you?
Well, I feel like 15 minutes is all people really tune into for live. So I feel like if you keep it under the 20-minute mark, we're doing well.
Yeah, then they can watch the whole thing. But that's about my timer because he's thrown all of his food on the floor, so I'm done.
But everything out, there's not too much food stuff happening on your end. Well, there sounds like there's a lot, but you've contained it. So
we tried. There's definitely a few remnants on the floor that I'll have to pick up.
Cool.
Yeah.
It was lovely to see you.
Yeah. You too. I'll see you when I see you. Thanks for joining, everyone. See you later.
Just let us know. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.